Carla Stefaniak was the kind of person who made every room feel louder and every trip feel like an event. 35 years old, living in Hallandale Beach in Miami, Florida, she had built a life that suited her exactly. Loud, vibrant, full of color. Sava. Her friend Greg described her as simply unforgettable, and if you had spent even an afternoon in her company, you would understand why that was not an exaggeration. Another friend called her a fiery Latina who loved adventure. Her brother Mario said their parents had needed eyes in the back of their heads just to keep up with her as a child. That energy had never left. Born in Venezuela, Carla was one of four siblings. When she was 19, her family relocated to the United States and settled in Florida. 4 years later, most of the family decided to return to Venezuela. Carla stayed. Florida was where she wanted to be, and she was never the type to go somewhere she did not want to go. She found work at an insurance agency, built a social circle without much effort, and threw herself into everything the state and the wider world had to offer. Travel was the clearest expression of who she was. Iceland by RV, skiing in Switzerland, the streets of New York City. Cuba, Spain, the Caribbean. She documented every trip, posted the photos and videos, built an audience online, and quietly dreamed of one day turning that passion into a full-time career. She was the kind of person who did not wait to start living. She was already doing it. So, her brother Carlos was married to a woman named April, and somewhere along the way, April and Carla had become inseparable. Carlos joked that his sister talked to his wife more than he did. The two women were best friends in the truest sense of the word, the kind of friendship where distance and time barely register. So when Carla's 36th birthday began approaching in late November 2018, it was April she called, and the trip they planned was Costa Rica. Carla made an itinerary. Of course she did. She planned every leg of the journey, every stop, every experience. Nothing could be missed. The final accommodation was an Airbnb at a gated complex called Villa Lamas in the mountains of Escazú, just 10 minutes from San José. Gorgeous views from the balcony, a pool, security guards on site. It looked by every reasonable measure like exactly the kind of place a person would choose to end a perfect week. On November 22nd, 2018, Carla and April landed in Costa Rica on Thanksgiving Day. The week unfolded the way Carla had imagined it would. Beaches, hot springs, incredible food, and constant social media updates to everyone back home. By all accounts, it was everything they had hoped for. On November 25th, Carla posted a photo of herself by the pool. She looked exactly like herself. Happy, present, exactly where she wanted to be. April was booked to fly home one day earlier than Carla, leaving her with one final night alone at the Airbnb. The next day would be her birthday. As soon as she landed back in Florida, her friends were already planning to take her out to dinner. There was something to look forward to on both ends of that last night. She had one evening to herself, and then celebrations waiting on the other side. At 11:30 in the morning on November 27th, Carla hugged April goodbye at the airport. The Uber driver who had been with her earlier that day offered her a city tour before dropping her back. She agreed, paid in cash, spent the afternoon seeing more of San Jose, sent photos back to her family, and bought herself a new purse and some jewelry, small treats. The kind of things you do on the last day of a trip when everything has gone well. The driver returned her to Villa Lamas, apartment 8, and she began getting ready around 6:30 in the evening, planning to head to a jazz cafe. But a tropical storm was moving in fast. The rain started hammering against the windows. Branches hit the glass. The wind was loud enough to swallow everything outside it. The jazz cafe was not going to happen. Carla sat in the villa alone, settled in, and moved her evening plans indoors. She completed her online check-in for her morning flight and messaged the same Uber driver to arrange a pickup the following morning at 8:30. She had shopping in mind and wanted to eat something before heading to the airport. Her flight home was not until 1:30 in the afternoon, and she was only 30 minutes away. There was no rush. At 8 in the evening, she sent a message to her family WhatsApp group. She wanted to go out, but said she was dead tired. The kind of message anyone would send at the end of a long trip when the weather outside makes the decision for you. Simple, normal. And then everything went dark. The complex lost power. The storm had knocked it out entirely. Carla messaged the group again, noting that the rain was intense and the power was gone, adding that it felt super sketchy. It briefly came back on. She sent a message to April. Just 2 words describing how unsettling the whole situation felt. Intermittent power, violent weather, nobody else around, a completely unfamiliar location. Most people reading those messages would feel the same thing she was describing. She was on FaceTime with a friend in New York at some point during the evening. She mentioned she was thirsty. He suggested she boil some water. She only had a skillet and told him she was going to ask one of the security guards on the property for a bottle of water. It was a reasonable, ordinary thing to do. There were guards on site. It was their job to be there. At around 9 in the evening, her phone died. The FaceTime call ended. That was the last communication anyone received from Carla Stefaniak. The following morning was her birthday. There was nothing from her. No messages. No posts. Everything sent to her on WhatsApp after 9 the previous night sat unread. With a storm and a power outage, it was possible to explain that away, at least briefly. Maybe she had been frantically packing since the lights came back on. Maybe she was already in the Uber and her phone was still dead. At 8:30 in the morning, the Uber driver arrived at Villa Lamas as planned. Carla was not there. April called the villa directly. A security guard told her that Carla had already left around 5 in the morning with her luggage in a separate Uber. That information made its way through the family quickly, and the more they sat with it, the less it held together. Her flight was at 1:30 in the afternoon. The villa was 30 minutes from the airport. There was no reason to leave before sunrise. She had already arranged a pickup with a driver she knew and trusted. Her own Uber account showed no transaction matching a 5 in the morning departure, and the driver she had booked for 8:30 was clear that he had arrived only at that time and had been nowhere near the complex earlier. Her phone data, when it became available, showed something significant. At 12:17 in the morning, roughly 3 hours after the FaceTime had ended, her phone had briefly connected to the internet again, but it had not moved. The signal placed her phone at the villa. It had not left the property. The 5 in the morning story had come entirely from one person on site. No one else could confirm it. No security cameras existed on the property to verify anything, and the Airbnb had already been cleaned and rebooked by the time anyone with authority arrived to look at it. Carla's family did not wait. They built a group chat of around 60 people and divided the work. Some contacted authorities. Some reached out to the Airbnb platform. Others focused on social media and getting reporters involved. The U.S. Embassy became involved. The FBI was brought in. A GoFundMe was set up to help family members travel to Costa Rica. The hashtag Find Carla spread across platforms. Her brother Carlos bought a one-way ticket to San José and went straight to the villa the moment he landed. The security guard there told him nothing that helped. 6 days after Carla was last heard from, officers arrived at the villa with dogs. What they found when they got inside was the smell of bleach and vinegar. The entire space had been scrubbed. Underneath what had been cleaned away, forensic examination recovered blood and biological evidence on the bed and on the floor. The villa that had been declared tidy and undisturbed by the cleaning team was not what it had appeared to be at all. It was now clear that Carla had not left the property by choice. The body of a woman was discovered in the San Antonio de Desamparados neighborhood, approximately 300 meters from the Villa Lamas complex. She was partially unclothed, half buried, and covered in plastic. Her phone, her passport, her laptop, and her suitcase were found nearby. Her brother Carlos was on the phone when the call came. He said he knew the moment he heard it. He looked at the sky and he cried. No confirmation was needed. The identification was confirmed. The cause of death was a blow to the head, combined with multiple stab wounds. Her arms and neck were covered in wounds. Her jaw was dislocated. Her neck was broken. A forensic examination found that the force of a knife entering her back had fractured 2 vertebrae. The evidence under her fingernails told the story of a violent struggle that lasted until the very end. DNA had been left behind by the person who killed her. The storm that night had been loud enough to swallow any sound she made. No one in the complex had stepped forward to say they heard anything at all. The timeline placed her death at around 10 in the evening, not long after she had told her friend in New York that she was going to ask one of the security guards for a bottle of water. Everyone connected to the property was interviewed. The owners cooperated. The cleaning staff were questioned. And as the interviews circled back repeatedly to the security guard who had been the origin of the 5 in the morning departure story, the contradictions mounted. His account shifted. In one version, he had seen her leaving in an Uber. In another version, he had been asleep and knew nothing. The more he was pressed, the more his story unraveled. He had fresh scratches on his body that he could not explain consistently. His name was Bismer Espinosa Martinez. He was 32 years old and had arrived in Costa Rica from Nicaragua in June of 2018, only a few months before Carla's trip. His immigration status was irregular, meaning he was in the country without documented legal authorization. He had been given a job as a security guard at the complex, a uniform, and his own apartment directly next was